Hello everyone and welcome to Star Wars on High. Thank you for stopping by. So with Andor on its way, I decided to backtrack and read some of the books and comics that may help with the lead up to the show. I started with Catalyst, a Rogue One novel by James Luceno. I felt it would be important to know the events of this book since it looks like it will run parallel with parts of Andor. At least that's what my assumption is right now. Unfortunately, I was left very underwhelmed by this book. I have heard people rave about this book for years about how great the story is and how it helps fill some of the blanks for Rogue One. And while I do agree that it does help some aspects of Rogue One, I just don't think the book was that great. The plot of the story is Galen's involvement with the plans for the Death Star. The entire book revolves around Krennic trying to find ways to convince Galen to work on the project, even though Galen has no idea that all of his research into kyber crystals is being weaponized as he continuously works. The bulk of the story was just very dry. There really was not a whole lot of action to keep my attention, even though that does not need to happen in a Star Wars book. But the whole time it just felt like there was just this creeping suspicion that something was going after the Urso family, which of course there was, but you just never really could sense that threat. I will say that this book does wonders for Orson Krennic. His character in Rogue One was great, but the story from Catalyst just brings him to a whole new level of evil. I was really hoping to like Galen Erso a lot more from this book, but his character just felt very stale and dry, and there really wasn't a lot of life to the character. Whereas it was the exact opposite with Lyra. She was always outspoken and upfront and ready to defend herself. However, that may just be how those two characters work, because it does mention in the book that they were attracted to each other because they were the complete opposites. So that may just be me misinterpreting the character. Perhaps Galen is just supposed to be a dry humor scientist, while Lyra is the very colorful and outspoken person. I mean, I guess in that regard they would be perfect for each other. Now, I've already expressed that James Luceno's stories just aren't for me, and that's not me saying that he's a bad author. His stories are very strong and hold a lot of weight to them, especially when it comes to science. Luceno excels at adding science into Star Wars, especially in Catalyst, as there are many passages that explain how the Death Star works in excruciating detail, from how it's constructed to what precisely needs to happen for it to work as predicted. Luceno did the exact same thing in the Legends novel Darth Plagueis. There were many passages where Plagueis was discussing the anatomy of certain species, and it was extremely hard to follow, but something that should exist in universe. Just as there are boring parts about real life and boring subjects in school, those things need to exist in Star Wars. It makes the universe feel more connected, and while I do enjoy learning how things work in Star Wars, this story just was not for me. I do think that some of this will play into Andor, however, mainly with the use of the Imperial Senate and the ISB officers. Seeing as by this point the Death Star is well into its construction, I'm sure we will hear lines here and there that directly tie into Galen Erso's research. At the same time, I could be completely wrong. Perhaps Andor takes place after all of the events of Catalyst, in which case we could potentially see a young Jyn Erso training with Saw, as we know that he will be in the show as well. And with that being the case, then maybe there will be more to tie in with Rebel Rising, which I just recently started. Overall, I'm still glad that I read Catalyst because I do have a better understanding on the construction of the Death Star, as well as the lengths that Galen and Lyra Erso went through to avoid Krennic to ensure that they would not be considered prisoners while working for the Empire. But what were your thoughts? Obviously, this review is about 6 years late, but did you read Catalyst when it first came out, or have you been putting it off as well? Let me know all of your thoughts down in the comments. Also, be sure to let me know if there's another book or set of comics I should look into as we prepare for Andor. But until the Rebel Rising review, that'll be it for this episode of The Road to Andor. Thank you all for sticking around, and we hope to see you again very soon.